President Trump floating the possibility of a $5 million gold card as a pathway to American citizenship.
So it's a gold card. It's somewhat like a green card, but at a higher level of sophistication.
So on February 25th, President Trump announced a new gold card. This is a program that allowed people to pay $5 million directly to the U.S. government, and that gave them a fast track to permanent residency or a visa. It's the first time the U.S. had ever done something like this.
And so we're certainly getting interest, and the phones are off the hook. Everybody's very curious about what that will look like. What will be the criteria?
So something that's interesting about this is other countries have golden visas or some form or another of basically paying your way into their country. And so this is getting a lot of attention, but actually this price is way higher than most other countries have for for the instance of Europe. You can sometimes get into some of those countries for a couple $100,000, maybe even less, depending on which country it is specifically. And so $5 million US is magnitudes larger than what it is to get into those countries. And so US isn't the first one to do it. And actually this is such a large price compared to so many other countries. So that's just some of the info that I have around this, but I'm curious to see what else they'll share on this topic.
So the U.S. has long had an investment visa program. The previous program that the gold card replaces is called EB-5. The way it worked is you paid somewhere between $900,000 to $1 million, somewhere around there, depending.
That's pretty cool. I actually didn't realize that existed.
On the program, usually infrastructure could be a development that would create jobs, up to 10 jobs, and then eventually you could get residency or citizenship.
The EB-5 program, although it has its problems.
I see. So that one seems to be more along the lines of creating businesses, because it mentioned preserving or creating 10 jobs in America. So this wasn't just a pure, you get to come to our country by handing us a bunch of cash or investing cash in our market of some sort. It seemed like that was tied to you're planning to come to America to create jobs for Americans.
Problems was a widely successful program.
But the key to that program was that there was job creation and investment as part of it. The gold card, there's no job creation requirement and there's no investment. It's straight cash to the government. The reason the U.S. is doing this now is because they need money. Now, President Trump says he could sell 1 million of these. That would be $5 trillion.
And if you sell 10 million of the cards, that's a total of $50 trillion.
Currently, there's a limited number of green cards that are available annually. In order to achieve the millions and trillions of dollars.
So that's definitely an interesting option. Again, like I said, this is quite a large amount of money that they're mentioning. In some of those other countries, like in Europe, for instance, sometimes you can get in by just buying a house. Like if you just bought a large enough home for a few $100,000, you get access to that country. And so here's basically like you hand the government $5 million. And so the government is incentivized to create jobs. So I understand their point of it's not directly tied to job creation, but handing the government money should inevitably be used for the benefit of its citizens.
That the president has referred to, you would have to increase the number of visas available to even come close to what he is suggesting.
The big question is whether this new program will coexist with the EB-5 and other existing programs, or whether if you're Apple and you want to bring in an engineer from China or Taiwan, whether this is the only real way to bring them in legally, in which case this could replace some of the other existing programs that make it legal, but certainly difficult to get people into the U.S.
I'm not entirely sure what he's implying there towards the end, so I agree. I think there's an open question on how did this coexist with other visa programs. But what they were sort of referencing was, I assume, like an H-1B, which is like the most common way for U.S. to get workers that are non-U.S. citizens. I can't imagine that that would be the goal, that every H-1B would be replaced with a $5 million card. I think that's poor reporting in my mind. I can't I can't imagine that would ever fly, and the fact that it's being insinuated here is bad. In my opinion, I think if that turns out to be true, bad on me, but I can't imagine that this would be their program, which would be every company within the US, you have to pay $5 million to have somebody work here. That doesn't sound right to me, especially given how those individuals do benefit the economy already. So if the outward goal is to benefit the US citizens, H-1Bs already do that. The EB-5, as they mentioned, would do that. And then this gold card would do that as well, just by grabbing a lot of cash from somebody who might not have invested in the country otherwise through like jobs or hiring. And then that money goes right to the government to then potentially offset taxes for US citizens or fund programs or create jobs in other ways. So again, I think that seems odd to me that they would even insinuate that that would not be the case, just because like every other country has that, and that would drastically change how the US interacts with any immigrants. And fundamentally, I would assume that would be stopped in some way. America is built off of immigration. Everybody's an immigrant in America, basically, obviously, except for Native people. And so the vast majority who are here have immigrated at some point or another. The country was founded on immigrants. And so to imply that we would basically get rid of the primary ways of immigration for folks in favor of this $5 million one, I would push back myself on taking that at face value.
My estimate is that they will probably sell in the thousands every year, but certainly not in the tens of thousands. This is a small number, but it contains a tax provision that is very beneficial.
I agree with that statement. I can't imagine 10 million people are just going to show up after this becomes live and just start handing us millions of dollars. I suspect that there's some people who are going to be interested and want to do it, and they maybe have a few thousand. I could definitely believe that the world is billions of people. There has to be some rich person who wants easy access to the US. But still, that would be quite a bit of money. Certainly billions of dollars a year, which would be nice.
To the wealthy. Rich people around the world right now want alternative passports. They want American citizenship. So there are a lot of people that will pay this $5 million to get citizenship and the benefits.
I will tell you, the people that can pay $5 million, they're going to create jobs. They're going to spend a lot of money on jobs.
Golden Visa program.
So that is another good point, which is they didn't really cover either, but Trump himself is right there for that clip, which is if you're somebody who has presumably not just $5 million, because it seems very unlikely to me that somebody would choose to completely uproot their life to come to America and be destitute if they just had exactly $5 million to pay for this visa. More likely than not, this is somebody who has tens or hundreds of millions of dollars who's saying, I have more than enough money for my country. This would just be much more convenient. I like the US. Maybe I want to move there. Maybe I just want a vacation there and just not have a hassle. And so these are individuals who likely will have millions of dollars left in their bank account after purchasing this visa. And then they can spend that in our economy. Presumably, if they're going to come to America, they're going to stay here for some time, and then they're going to spend their money here. So that will also inherently boost up jobs and the economy in America as well.
Programs have been there for quite some time. The purpose is to stimulate the economies. And now it's really gaining popularity. People are investing more and more into these programs.
Some popular programs right now are Malta, because Malta, with $1 million or so, gets you entry into the European Union. That's very popular. It's a passport. It's not just a citizenship. Portugal is very popular. Italy, they all have benefit programs that either reduce your taxes or allow you to retire there.
China, India, the Middle East, they were not necessarily born with very strong passports that can travel elsewhere. So they're looking for strong passports to better their life, have access to that healthcare, that education, that business opportunity.
The whole industry of investment visas is a $20 billion a year industry. And the reason is that today's ultra wealthy, they want backup plans if they have to leave their country or there are too many geopolitical problems in the country. They want another country they can go to. Many of them also want to live or retire in a different country. All it takes is $5 million. The question will be whether you will be vetted, what that vetting sounds like. According to the Commerce Secretary and President Trump, there will be very little requirements for people as long as they pay the money.
Would a Russian oligarch be eligible for a gold card?
Yeah, possibly. Hey, I know some Russian oligarchs that are very nice people. A lot of people are going to want to be in this country, and they'll be.
Yeah, of course. The entire point is to get people's money, and that's also why it's such a high number. As they showed through some of those highlights, some of even the more popular countries in Europe, they highlighted about 500K. So again, for 5 million, this would be 10 times the amount, and it's even cheaper in some of those other countries as well. So this is a huge cash grab compared to other countries around the world. And so, again, you'd likely be somebody who has, I would assume at least 10 to 50 million would be the starter range of somebody who's looking to buy one of these visas, if not more. And so those people have money. I assume those people can already get into the country. I doubt they're struggling to charter a private plane and get some type of vacation visa in America. This is probably just making their life easier over time. So I don't see it as necessarily an issue of, likely we're not going to invite anybody who couldn't have gotten here otherwise. This is likely just a streamlined process and maybe a longer lasting system so that they don't have to constantly go through paperwork, and they're just happy to pay the upfront cost for that convenience.
Be able to work and provide jobs and build companies and pay taxes, all of those things. It's an incredible thing.
There are a number of these programs all around the world, but they have had varying success, and many countries have, in fact, attempted to limit the program, either because of litigation or because of the impact on the local communities. And so I think that there is a lot of risk with these types of programs because you need to really carefully vet where the money is coming from and what the impact will be on American communities. I fundamentally agree with where President Trump is coming from. Immigrants actually are great economic contributors to the United States. I think where we may differ here, it's just a payment or a tax to the government, and it is not necessarily improving local communities, investing in our communities, investing.
So again, this point got brought up a few times, so they seem to really be anchoring on this. My interpretation of them making this argument multiple times through various individuals, to me, signals that they don't believe the government is actually helping the people, which is odd to me, especially because that's the entire point of the government, by the people, for the people. And so, in my mind, like, the government has a lot of things that are currently in existence, like the FDA and DA and the housing and all those things. And there's consumer protections, there's financial security portions, there's Social Security, there's Medicare, Medicaid. There's so many programs that exist specifically to help consumers and Americans. They already exist. And actually, the way that most states get their funding to do their own programs for schooling or policing or whatever it is that they're going to do for infrastructure actually come from the federal government. The vast majority of funding that goes to them is the federal taxes that we pay, and then the federal government pays them back to the states. And so I'm not entirely sure why these individuals would sort of insinuate that, like, that there would be this huge level of corruption in the government. Not saying that there's zero corruption in the government. I'm sure there's no government, probably in the history of the world, and probably never will be, that they get to absolute zero corruption. But to say, oh, the government is just going to pocket this 5 million and screw over its citizens is a weird take to have, in my opinion, considering the government already does so many things for us as is. And most of our complaints is that the government doesn't do more, in my opinion. Obviously, in some cases, we would like the government to stand back and maybe not get involved in certain categories. But most things we complain about are like certain regulations on healthcare, on financial sectors, on corporations that are trying to become monopolies. These are all things that the government does already to prevent bad things from happening. And in many ways, we want those things to be fixed. Minimum wage, these are all things that the government enforces. And so to me, it seems odd that this is a take that this video overall seems to be taking, considering we've spent so much time on it, is that the government is just inherently corrupt. Trump is just going to like pocket this $5 million and we're all worse off for it. And I don't think that's the case personally. Maybe I'm optimistic. Feel free to add your own thoughts in the comments below, but my expectation is more money to the government is inherently good. And if I don't have to pay it through my own taxes, even better. And so I think that is the entire point of the government. The government also creates so many jobs. And so I think it's a net positive. Again, I'm not sure why they're kind of mentioning, oh, this money just goes to the government and like it's a trash can, like it just immediately gets burned or something.
In underserved areas or creating American jobs.
One of the big controversies is whether Congress needs to approve this. Now, the EB-5 program was just recertified in 2022 because there was all kinds of fraud and abuse, and Congress worked very hard to get that program back on track, create the jobs from that.
Bottom line is that any new visa category has to be congressionally authorized. You cannot create a new visa program or a new green card without congressional authority. You can't do it out of executive action.
But so far, no one in Congress has said they need to weigh in on this because the Republicans control Congress right now, and they have not said that they need to approve this. Trump plans to start selling this sometime in March. We'll see.
Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, please hit like or subscribe. I'll see you around.